The St. Joseph Basketball Jamboree has a long and fascinating history in the world of sports in the city of St. Joseph. To celebrate more than 30 years of the Basketball Jamboree, we decided to sit down with 4 former players, coaches, and administrators for their take on how it all began.
It first came up about 1946. That was the year one of the school district officials met and decided to have the football jamboree. And at that time, they brought up about having a basketball jamboree or some basketball program. And for some reason, it was turned down. And the football jamboree was such a success that when I got to the supervisor's job, I decided one day that it would be a great idea. So I talked with Mel Clark, first person I talked with about it, and he was in favor. Talked to the rest of the coaches. Everybody seemed to be very, very much in favor of it, so I then went to the principals, and everybody seemed to like the idea that I talked with. So I scheduled a date at the Civic Arena, and we started playing basketball, 12 quarters, and played all day, it seemed like.
So what schools were involved at that point?
At that time, all 4 city schools, Central, Benton, Lafayette, and LeBlond, were involved, both boys and girls. The girls played the first 6 quarters and the boys the second. We had a full house, packed house. It was standing room only. A very successful day.
And so, Mel, what do you remember about that? Besides the
Well,
fact
after
that you
Bob
won?
came and asked me what my opinion, I thought it was a great idea, and I really liked the first Jamboree because Lafayette won it at that time.
Of course, of course.
No, it was great, like Bob said, standing room crowd only, and I think a good thing about the Jamboree, I know some coaches do not want to give up a game. It counts as a game, but I think the good thing, you can play a lot of the kids. Doesn't count in your one-loss record, and that's the thing that I liked. You could see kids under pressure play, and you could evaluate them, and if they did poorly and we lost, it didn't really matter in the one-loss record. So
I'm sure it was the biggest crowd that most of the kids had ever played in front of. How did you get them ready for that packed atmosphere? And also, it's the first time they're playing basketball in front of everyone. What were the nerves like for your team that night?
well, I'm sure they were nervous, but once you get out on the court, you kind of forget that and kind of just play. And I think they really enjoyed the big crowds, and also the crowds during the mid-'70s and mid-'80s, packed gyms. I mean, you had to get there early to get a seat, and I think that was due to the good competition, and I wish I could go back to that now, because I think it's great that you could see all 4 schools play like that. And we used to play on a Saturday night. We couldn't play in the middle of the week. When I first started coaching, we had to play Friday and Saturday, so the city games were always on a Saturday night.
Okay.
But they were fun.
What you two as players, you guys played in the 80s. What was it like for you playing in your first Jamboree? Well, also your senior night Jamboree when you were seniors. I mean, talk a little bit about those years.
I think it's always an exciting time. As Mel had mentioned earlier, it's a great opportunity to see yourself against other competition, not guys that you practice against for weeks leading up to it. And you're able to see the video, see the tape, and I think coaches always like the opportunity to point out to players, here's why we've been practicing on this or this and this. And they can see it on tape. And I think as Mel mentioned, that there's thousands of people in the stands, but I can guarantee you that his players heard his voice over those other thousands. But it's a great time, a great experience.
Plus, you also go against the people you compete against throughout the year. Give you an opportunity to maybe have a little bragging right going into the season. At that time, we also had a city league where we played each school twice throughout the course of the season. So, and that was also at the Civic Arena. So it was kind of a way of measuring up to where you were at that point in the season, what you had to look forward to throughout the course of the year.
Let's talk a little bit about the school rivalries in St. Joe. I mean, if you've lived here, if you went to school here, you know where you are loyal. So, Bob, talk a little bit about what was the biggest rivalry back in the earlier days of the Jamboree?
I think Benton or Central and Lafayette both had really outstanding teams. And one of those years, I don't remember what year, Cartwright and
76.
76. That was before the Jamboree. But great rivalry. I mean, we couldn't get a gym large enough to handle the crowd when those two teams got together. Back when I was only here 2 years when the Jamboree was in force, 2 or 3, but I think all the schools had a great rivalry. Back when I played, it was Christian Brothers and us. We just were head to head with them. They were great, and we played pretty well at times. But and then Central always had a great rivalry with Benton. It didn't matter who had what when you played Central. Everybody wanted to beat Central because of the size of the school, primarily, you know. And
Mel, what would you think when you were coaching in those days? What was the team to beat? Who was the team to beat?
We like to beat all of them if we could, but I remember in '76, the year that Lafayette won the state. I think Central could have won the state that year. I think we beat them once, or no, we beat them twice, and they beat us twice.
yeah.
And Benton, they could have won the state that year. We beat them, I think, in an overtime in the district to advance to the state. So I think Central could have won it, Benton could have won it, and LeBlanc the next year in '77 won Class 2. So they were all pretty strong at that time. I think probably some of the best basketball St. Joe's ever had.
It was.
How about from your perspective?
I guess from our perspective, it was always Benton and Lafayette. I think Dr. Alcorn brought a point that he always wanted to beat Central because of the size of school, but the competition at that point in time, based on some of the players at Lafayette, was generally Benton and Lafayette. Did
you ever have someone that you loved playing against and could not wait to get out on the court to play against?
I think Bob Sundell was always that person, and probably not a surprise to anyone sitting at this couch, because you knew you had to come and play every single minute of every single game, and if you didn't, he's going to hand you your lunch. And so you came to play, and it was a great competition because you fought, you clawed, you scratched, but in the end, win, lose, or draw, you shook their hand and you got ready for the next game.
Yeah, I think when we played, Doug and Bob were the two, players to see, and it brought out a lot of fans, and we packed the house every time, whether it would be the Jamboree or, like I mentioned before, when we had our city league, and it was just a great rivalry. But at that time, also Central had some big players, with Doug Boucher and Tim Nordstrom. So at that point, all the city teams had size, and so there was a good rivalry between all of us. And when you go against these guys, not only during the basketball season, but you see them in the off season as well, and that's where the rivalries start. You see how they develop. You start seeing how people are investing their time and working in the off season, and then you put it to use during the season, and that's where
good point.
we always like to see that.
Good point.
What about the school spirit? Did it always, there's always trash talking going on, either before, during, or after, always, even, when players are on the court and they miss a shot and they start, screaming things to the kids. Did that fuel you as a player? Did you hear those things when you were on the court, or did it make a difference in the way that you played?
You could feel the excitement, but you couldn't really hear it. You block it out. You're focused on the game. You know, each school had their own slogans or things that they, you know, at Benton it was the South will rise again, you know, so that was a big thing that the student body bought into, and each school had their own atmosphere that they brought to the Civic Arena. And you could feel that atmosphere, you could feel the tension in the crowd, but when you're out there playing, once you tip the, you know, off the tip, then it was just ready to play, and you just kept your focus, and you kind of put that to the offside.
I think some players handle it differently. Some try to do more than they're capable, which hurts themselves and their team, and some it's just a motivator to do more and to play harder and to be a little more successful. And so it kind of depends on the player and how they respond when the lights come on.
Mm-hmm. The Jamboree has changed over the years a little bit. It's at the Civic Arena, and then it became, and then Central moved to the Kansas City League, so they weren't playing as much local teams, and then it became the City Showcase, and now we're back to kind of where we started. Is that where you want it to be? Is that how you like to see it?
I would like for it to be just exactly the way it started. I think that was perfect. Every school played each other 8-minute quarters, just as a regular game. You only got 3 quarters, but it was still a regular quarter. And now I understand they've changed that. Neil has mentioned to me that they've changed all that, which I wouldn't like.
And what's the format today? Explain the format.
Well, the format today is, well, we still play 2 8-minute quarters, and no, we go 10-minute halves. Yeah, 3 10-minute quarters against the other schools. The reason why I'm a little confused on that is because next year we're going to go to 6-minute quarters.
Okay.
And the reason we go to 6-minute quarters is because the state association has established the Jamboree throughout the whole state, which I think that we're innovators of here in St. Joe, because no other schools had a basketball Jamboree. We always had to have the Jamboree as one of our regular season games in order to be able to have this format. And now the state has adopted the Jamboree for all schools to have 2 or 3 teams to come together before the regular season starts. But they've set parameters. The 6-minute quarters are what we've set it at. And you have it a week before the regular season starts.
Will that count as a regular season game then?
It will not. So that allows each team to pick up another game. And we could have actually done that this year. This was the first year that they have adopted that. Since we already had the game set next year, then it will be the first year we start that. So it'll be a week earlier than what we normally have it.
Do you think that gives you enough time to see really how the schools will play against each other? It's a shorter amount of time, so what do you think about that?
Well, the state says you have to have 9 practices in before you do that. So I think that at least everybody's on the same playing field level, same number of practices and so forth. And I think at that point you're probably ready to go against another team or a couple teams to see where you stand. The nice thing about the Jamboree is you also go against different types of philosophies. Teams that run zones, teams that run full court press, teams that run man. And it allows you to see where you're at, what you need to work on, and kind of get geared up for the regular season.
Mel, I'm sure that you saw some things that made your players very strong and some things that made your players very weak. What did you tell your team? What was good about your team, even the one that won in 1982? What were their strong points?
I think you're still evaluating at the Jamboree, and as I said earlier, it just gives you a chance to look at several kids. Then you can go back and look at the tape and kind of reevaluate. So I think it's a learning experience for the kids and the coaches.
Mm-hmm. I think that also some players perform much better in a practice situation, and some who don't look as well in a practice environment perform much better in a game situation. And so I think it gives an opportunity to see kids in both lights. And really, because the Jamboree is going to move up a week, it's going to be a glorified practice in order for coaches to be able to see many kids in that environment and see how they perform.
I know from a fan perspective, since it was the week of Thanksgiving, a lot of people came home from college. It was kind of a homecoming of sorts, and it was fun to see everybody in that regard. And Plus, we got to watch a lot of really fun basketball. When you look back on that time, do you remember that week as being just a fun week to kick off the season?
I think anytime that it's your first contest, the first time you get to play against someone else, it's always going to be an exciting time. Practices tend to become very dreary over the course of a few weeks. And so for I think both players and coaches alike, it's an exciting time to be able to see where you stand at that point in time, and it gives you some things to work on in the future.
I think it's a great opportunity for the community to see, what talent's out in the city this year. Whether it's some of the teams that maybe we need to follow a little more closely, or who's the teams that you can see they're on the verge of making a move, whether it be in their conference or towards a state run. And it's a fun opportunity because a lot of the kids have just been graduated for the last year or two, come back and they can kind of see where they're at and say, hey, I was down on that floor 2 years ago, and it was a lot of fun, and they share their memories of the experience that they had at the Jamboree.
Bob, I know we've talked before about some of the funny things that have happened at the Jamboree over the years. I know at one time you said the lights completely went out.
We were in the middle of a quarter. I think it was a girls' game. I know Mel may remember this better. And all of a sudden it just went black. I mean, totally black. You couldn't see a foot in front of you. And the lights had gone out all over the city of St. Joseph. So we sat for about 10 or 12 minutes, I don't know how long exactly, 10 or 12 minutes just in the dark. Everybody was in shock, pretty much. But we tried to get the auxiliary electricity to work, and it wouldn't work. We couldn't get it started, and so we just sat and waited. That was the most interesting time.
And it was pitch dark. You couldn't see anyone, or
you couldn't
you
walk
didn't know where you were at.
And people were well behaved during this time? No chaos
I
or
guess.
anything?
Actually, people were very quiet and just kind of sat and waited. And the lights came back on. We continued the quarter.
Just went right back into it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
Janet
gosh.
shot the lights out that night, huh?
Let's talk a little bit about how the Jamboree has a lot of local ties, and the fact that a lot of the people who went to school here were the players here who now coach here, and they have stayed here. And some of the people that we have seen, I mean, you two are great examples of people who have decided to stay here and have all of that history with St. Joe. Why do you think it's such a lure for people to stay here and coach and be around the people they went to high school with and have all of that history with? What do you think about that?
I think it's a great opportunity for those of us who've chosen to stay in St. Joseph to continue to be around friends and family. And so when you have family here in the area and the opportunity arises for you to be offered a position here in the St. Joe School District, what a great opportunity to learn and grow as a professional, but also have the opportunity to stay around family.
Mm-hmm.
I think, to me, St. Joseph is a great school district. It's a solid school district. There are not a lot of changes. They're very dependable. It's just a great place to work and live as far as I'm concerned.
I would agree with that. Let's talk a little bit about fans. Even talk about parents. When you were coaching, did you feel like you had a lot of fan involvement and parent involvement? Do you think it's more intense now, less intense now? What do you think as far as a head coach perspective?
I could have been naive, but I think during my coaching days, I think the parents were not involved as much as they are right now, just from observing games and listening to parents in the stands. So I think the parents are more involved now than they were in the mid-'80s.
Did you give the parents an opportunity to be involved when it came to your basketball team, or were you off limits?
Well, our practices were always closed, and I think I did tell the kids, I said, if your parents are going to be complaining all the time, your playing time is going to be less and less. So they probably complained, but I didn't hear I didn't hear it a whole lot.
Each school had a pretty active boosters club back then, but I think it was more of a supportive atmosphere rather than one that was
Right.
trying to find fault. You're asking the wrong guy here, because nobody ever complained about his coaching.
Oh, why?
I think one of the biggest concerns I've had over the last several years is really the lack of student support at contest. You just don't see the students packing the stands as they once did, and so I think we have to find ways to boost the school spirit to get kids more involved in school activities, regardless of the activity. I think we want students to be involved, and I think that will increase the numbers.
There's so many things vying for our time now. Whereas, in the early days of the Jamboree, it was kind of the big two sports, football and basketball. And so whenever there was an opportunity for everybody to play, you were there, And now there are so many different things to be involved with, which is great, but it also, does take away from that a little bit. Let's go around the couch. We'll start with you, Bob. Best part about the Jamboree that stands out to you?
I thought the support of the fans, the numbers and the attitudes and the excitement, and I thought that was the best part. And of course, we had great competition. We had some really, really outstanding basketball players, and everybody got together, which just added to the excitement and the competition. And it was just a great night.
Mel?
I would say community involvement, probably, because the community really got behind it. And I was trying to think, Bob, I think we started girls basketball in about 73, didn't we?
I think so, yes.
Then I think when the Jamboree started in 83, it was boys and girls, wasn't it?
Played 12 quarters.
Okay, yeah.
Started four Sunday, I think.
But I think the community involvement and getting coaches a chance to look at a lot of kids.
I'd have to agree with Mel that the level of community involvement was outstanding. The student engagement from each school was unbelievable, and really was one of the very few times that I had an opportunity to be on the court at the same time with my younger brother. And so that was an exciting time.
That's good.
From the player and coach's standpoint, winning it was probably the thing that stands out the most. It was always fun to go in and see the pride of all the students in the crowd and how they supported their school, but to walk out of there with a win was always a fun way of finishing the night.
Speaking of, any guesses on who holds the most wins? And I have the boys here for Jamborees.
I don't have a clue.
Mel, what do you think?
Who won the most? Who has won the most?
Who has won the most?
I would say probably Central.
Doug?
I think I have the insider information on this one, so I'll pass that to Mr. Hook.
I have also the
You
insight
do.
for both boys and girls, actually.
Okay, thank you, because for the boys
I was
have
guessing, but I thought that.
You guys right.
you can have wishful thinking. Central with 11 wins, Benton right behind them with 10, and Lafayette with 5. So neck and neck with Benton and Central there. Was that a surprise to you?
It just goes in cycles.
Yeah.
It goes in spurts.
Benton had some great teams there for a while. Does this include girls as well? Or
No, I
just-
didn't have a chance to get the girls.
Probably Central also.
They had.
Think so?
I took a look at their.
Accommodated the girls, I think, for a period of time.
That's
I think
fun.
Benton was, lately they've made a run. They've won several.
Yeah,
lately,
you're
so
right,
I think
they have.
they're- I think it was pretty close, like 12-11 or 12-10.
Oh,
for
wow.
Central. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Well, being a Central Indian, I felt I needed to bring that up. Let's talk a little bit about the difference of the players, maybe in your era, and then the players of today. Any specifics that you see that are different between? I guess we could talk about a little bit the way travel teams have really taken over. A lot of sports beginning in sometimes second grade. So what kind of differences do you see between players then and now?
A big difference that I don't know whether this is with the players, but it's with the uniforms. My first years at Lafayette, you know, they were short shorts, and now they come down over the knees, and I think I like a happy medium rather than
Yeah.
the great lengths that they've gone to. But
We have some pictures that we will
Oh,
be showing
okay.
throughout this that you will be able to take a look at how short those shorts went. Doug Flowers?
I think you'd be hard pressed to find any student athlete, especially boys, in basketball that have a pair of shorts at home that go below their knees, and so it's something that they become very accustomed to, and so times have changed in regard to that. But I think that with the advent of the three-point line and with some size, you either have kids who can dunk the ball, who are always practicing on dunking the ball, or they're shooting three-pointers. The mid-range game, I think, is lost to a lot of degree, and so I think there's a big piece to that for kids who become more skillful, they can find a niche.
What do you see, Neil?
Well, I think that the kids are a lot stronger. You know, there's so many off-season programs and weight programs that we didn't have the luxury of going through when we were in high school that they have now. So, you know, it seems like they're a little more agile, they're a little stronger, and probably a little faster than what we were. And we had to rely on our finesse and knowledge of the game in order to be able to compete, I guess, each and every night. So,
Mel, sometimes when you would have players, the first time you would see them, would that be their freshman year, or did you have an idea of who was coming up?
I knew from the Rubidoux standpoint, our feeder school, but basically, yes, I knew who was coming in and who wasn't coming in.
We had a middle school program at the same time going on where the middle schools played each other. So there was a little bit of scouting went on probably there.
Still happens today. Mm-hmm. Well, Bob, when you started the Jamboree back in 1982, did you think, 31, 32 years later, it would still be going?
I thought it would. I hoped it would. As I mentioned, the football started in 1946, and it was still going, and it had been very successful, and I was hoping the same thing would happen with the Jamboree. And apparently it has.
It has. Well, thank you all so much for being here, and it's always fun to talk about basketball in St. Joseph, and especially the Jamboree. And so let's do it again sometime, right?
These two guys are talking about strength. There weren't very many guys stronger than these two ever played basketball in St. Joe.
We have some pictures that we're going to show after this is over, okay. So everybody gets to remember Doug and Neil as Benton players.
Were they photoshopped?
I will not Photoshop them. They are the originals.
We'll argue they were.
Yeah, we will.
You will know.
Are we off the air now?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Joey Austin with the St. Joseph School District. Have a great day.